Alright, so we're checking out the Hohem iSteady MT2 gimbal in this video, and here's what it looks like here. And if you're considering getting a gimbal, if you're a content creator, which is, something that a lot of folks have been thinking about lately and maybe want to improve the stability of their videography, there's two main reasons to get this gimbal over some of the ones out there. So the first one, of course, is the AI tracking feature, which is thanks to this little device here. It's a little camera, and it's got basically some AI built into it, and you can use some gestures to control it, to turn it on and off, and it will follow you around. And if you want to get this little device, you have to get the MT2 Kit version. This is included in the kit version. If you just get the MT2 by itself, not the kit version, you won't get the little AI tracker, and you'll have to pay for that separately, which I believe is like about $60, I believe, somewhere around there. So make sure if you want to get the main feature of this gimbal here is this, and you want to make sure you get this one, so make sure you get the kit version. We'll talk more about this here in a moment. And the second main feature you want to pick up this gimbal here is its versatility. You're going to be able to use it with your regular cameras. For example, the one I'm actually filming on, the Sony ZV-1. I've also gotten it to balance with the Sony a7S II, but not with the 24-105 zoom lens. I have been able to balance it with the smaller 20mm Tamron lens, and it has to do with the overall weight capacity of the gimbal. So one of the downsides, right away, is that the weight capacity is 1,200 grams, or about 2.64 pounds. Anything more than that, then the gimbal won't balance, and then you'll basically just get an error and it won't function. So keep that in mind. If you're dealing with much bigger and heavier cameras with like big zoom lenses, for example, you're probably not going to want to get this gimbal for that reason. Just because it has a weight limitation, and you're going to need something, a gimbal that's a lot bigger with a lot heavier motors to deal with that amount of weight. But even if you have a full frame camera, if you have a smaller lens on it, if it's less than 2.64 pounds, it will balance and it will work, and I have tested that. But in addition to your regular cameras, of course, like the Sony cameras, you can also use your action cameras like your GoPros and also your smartphones. So it does come with a bunch of adapters and stuff to get those other cameras to work. So here's like a GoPro mount here. You get this Arca Swiss plate. You get a phone mount here that will work with most smartphones, and it also has an Arca Swiss adapter there. You need this L bracket here to attach those things to get the cameras to attach to the gimbal. And the nice thing about this one is it will attach horizontally for landscape or vertically for portraits. So for those of you that do vertical videos for Instagram, TikTok, etc., then this gimbal also offers that versatility. You get a whole host of cables here, and that is going to be for your camera control on the gimbal here. So like most gimbals, you can control your camera like zoom and other camera functions via this port here. It's a USB-C port. Also has reverse charging via USB-C to your camera. You can plug that in and charge up your camera from the gimbal. There's some big batteries inside here. It's saying about 17 hours of power on time with like a ZV-1, which is lighter pocket-sized camera. And of course, you get this little mini tripod that's attached here via 1/4-20 thread on the bottom. I do wish it was a bit bigger. It does help when you collapse it to kind of hold the gimbal. But I wish it was a little bit bigger than this one. Other than that, it's a minor gripe. And then you get a manual. There are a bunch of QR codes in the manual, for example, that go to tutorials and other videos. For example, the video on how to balance this gimbal here. I'm not going to cover that in this video because they have a really good video on how to do that, and I highly recommend going to that video, because that is one of the things about this gimbal that you're going to probably well, it didn't take me very long to figure out, but it is a little bit tedious to balance the gimbal, because when you switch cameras, the weight changes, and then every time the weight changes, you will need to rebalance the gimbal. It is fairly, it's fairly simple once you figure it out. I mean, there's these levers here that adjust the balance of each axis. So there's the pan, tilt, and roll axes, and then there's also these locking mechanisms here that lock each of the axes. And that basically, if you follow the balancing tutorial, it talks about how to use all of those to balance your various cameras, and then you can, if it doesn't balance, then you'll get an error because there'll be like the motors will be overloaded and the gimbal won't function. So that's probably one of the most important things. If you've never dealt with a gimbal before, learning how to properly balance this is important. It's not terribly difficult once you learn it, and all of the little levers and everything are fairly easy to use. It's fairly intuitive to figure out once you learn the process, but if you don't watch the video, you might have a little bit of trouble, so I highly recommend watching the video. Okay, so the AI tracker, it attaches via some magnets and some pins right over here on the gimbal. It's labeled clearly, so can't really miss it. And you just attach it like this. It just attaches magnetically, and it's easy to pop on and off. There is a on-off switch here, and basically it'll power on when the gimbal is powered on, and then if you're not using it, you can either just turn it off so it doesn't draw power, or you can just pull it off completely. All right, so taking a look around the gimbal where all your controls are, just sort of identify them really quickly. Charging port here to charge up the internal battery. Got a 1/4-20 thread here so you can attach some other accessories, perhaps some lights. Power button here, long press to turn it on. You got your trigger here so you can recenter the gimbal and also rotate it for selfies. Got a zoom lever here along with a shutter button, so if you connect up your camera with the included cables, and if your camera is in the compatibility list, there's only a certain number of cameras that are actually compatible. You can control your camera and zoom functions off the gimbal here without actually touching the camera. Got your joystick here for moving the gimbal around. Got your mode button here, nice little OLED screen. Got your A and B buttons here for pan and tilt time lapses, so you can do some motion time lapses with these two buttons. And then you got this multi-function scroll wheel and button here, and so that has a few different functions. You can control your focus with this scroll wheel. That's the main function. You can also control the roll axis with this one. And another function of this wheel here is to control the fill light that's on the AI tracker. So right below here, the tracker has a fill light that's basically a white light and also an RGB light. You can control the intensity of that light, also the color temperature of the light, and then you can switch between white mode and RGB mode, so you can have different colors as well. It's not a particularly super bright light. I wouldn't use it unless I would only use it if you're in a real pinch. I would have other types of lighting available to you to get obviously better video, but you can use it in an emergency. It will provide a little bit of light, but again, I wouldn't recommend this as a main light, of course. So just talk about the AI tracker a little bit more in depth. Obviously, AI tracking is not anything new. A lot of gimbals have it, but you're restricted to using it with the smartphone app that the gimbal comes with. So typically a lot of gimbals work with smartphones. They come with an app, and then you can use that smartphone app to do the ability. There's just things like where you can track people and objects. And of course, Hohem has their own smartphone app as well, and you can do additional tracking functions besides the AI tracking on here. Where this AI tracker comes in most useful is when you're using other cameras that obviously aren't smartphones, like your GoPros, your action cameras, and other types of pocket cameras and full frame cameras. You have the ability to track people and objects with the AI tracker without having to use a smartphone app. And I believe this is the only company right now that has this capability. As far as I know, and I may be mistaken, let me know in the comments below if there's another company that has something like this, where you can use like an action camera or some other camera besides a smartphone app to be able to do this kind of tracking. Now, to use the tracking feature is very easy. You just have to have the camera facing you and also the AI tracker facing you, and you just give it an OK gesture. The light on here will turn from red to green, meaning it's now active, and then it'll begin to track you. Now, in order to turn off the AI tracking function, you basically just put your palm up to the AI tracker, and this looks like you're putting up a stop sign, and then it'll actually turn it off. The light will go from green to red, and it'll turn the tracking function off. Now, I found that for the most part, the tracking function works pretty well. in most situations, unless the lighting conditions are really, really poor. And the other restriction, I think, is in some instances where you move too far away from the camera or from the tracker, and it's not able to discern what it's tracking, then it will basically lose sight of the object, and it'll stop the tracking function. Now, one of the reasons why I feel like this gimbal is going to be useful for me is to be able to, for example, track me while I'm, for example, riding a bike or a scooter or something else like that. And for the most part, it was able to track me even at fairly, big distances. But on some instances, a little bit too far away, it did lose track of me. So it's something that I think that could be improved in maybe future firmware updates. But I think for the most part, as long as you're within, say, 30, 35 feet of the AI tracker camera, you shouldn't have any problems being tracked by this particular tracker. Now, the other thing is if you're going too fast. So if you're within the field of view of the tracker and you're moving at a certain speed, but then you start to accelerate beyond, say, maybe like 15 miles an hour, if you're going way too fast, then at that point, it's not able to keep up. So that's another limitation in terms of the speed of the tracker and of the speed of the object that it's trying to track. And just a quick word on the build quality of the gimbal. It is, the handle here has a lot of plastic and it's kind of a soft touch. It's not slippery, but I think that a little bit more grippy material here would be nice to have. At this price point, it's kind of hard to complain because it's got a lot of features. All of the metal parts of the gimbal are nice and solid. No complaints. The build quality is pretty nice at this price point. So if you're considering perhaps getting the other Hohem iSteady, I think it's called the M6, which also has the kit version with the AI tracker, that one only works for smartphones. That's like about $100, about $110 less than the MT2. So if you're only going to be working with smartphones and want this AI tracking feature, maybe consider that one. But the versatility of the MT2, which allows you to use action cameras and other types of cameras without the ability, without having to have the smartphone app, does make the additional $110 I think worth it in my opinion. But of course, that's subjective. In my opinion, I think it's worth it, but maybe for your particular use case where you don't have a ton of different cameras, maybe it's not as valuable. Anyway, I think that's going to cover for this video. Got any questions, let me know down in the comments below. There'll be a link down in the video description and perhaps maybe a coupon code to this particular gimbal if you want to check it out. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. That'll do it for this one. Talk to you guys in the next video.